I'd like all of you to experience what I experienced, and please help me welcome Nanci Luna Jiménez to the stage.
My mentor and friend, Lillian Roybal Rose, used to say, racism is hard. What happens to us as immigrants is hard. What happens out there in the world day to day is hard. But what happens between us, entre raza, that's what tears us apart. She wasn't minimizing the effects of racism and other oppressions on us. She was highlighting the way that those outside messages get in our heads, the way that we end up internalizing them, the way that we end up acting them out against ourselves and against members of our own group, in this case, entre raza. There isn't an oppression on the face of the earth where the target group, that's the group that's on the receiving end of that oppression, doesn't take some part of that misinformation, that lie, that stereotype, internalize it, and then act it out in the only safe places society allows when there's an imbalance of power, which is of course going to be against ourselves and against members of our same group. My mother, like me, was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. Her parents, my abuelitos, they were born in Mexico and raised there and came to the United States as adults. My mom, her first and primary language was Spanish until she went to school. She never remembered learning English, but pretty quickly she became, like many of the children of non-English speaking immigrants, the interpreter for her parents in the world. She would talk about the kinds of discrimination and barriers that she knew her daughters were going to be up against. She used to call them the 3 strikes. She's like, you're female, you're brown, and you're poor. And she'd be damned if she was going to add another strike to that. So, in her mind, she thought us speaking English with an accent, I want to be really clear, I don't care what language you speak it with an accent, okay? Everyone speaks with an accent. But there's some accents, of course, that are more targeted than others. And she didn't want that for us, for her daughters. You see, even those of us who speak Spanish are still carrying internalized oppression. None of us escapes this. So why do we continue to do this? Well, I would offer it's not our fault. It's an effect of oppression. We know that. We know that when we don't get a chance to heal, we're going to reenact that. And I invite you to think about, given that we know that, what would it mean for us to make a commitment to never again rank another person's authenticity as member in a group, ever again? Well, I think it would take some healing for us, for all of us. And you might be wondering, well, how do we do that? How do we heal? Well, healing looks many ways to many different people. But for me, it's been a practice of constructivist listening. It's been a personal practice for me, and it's also been something that I bring into every workshop and every offering that I've produced and brought into the world over the last 30 years. What is constructivist listening? Well, it's a timed, confidential exchange of attention where a speaker and a listener get the same amount of time in both roles. It's not more mysterious or fancy than that. And yet that simple practice has been a radical practice for liberation and human connection like I have never experienced. And because I am Lillian's mentee, and I learned from the best teacher in the world, there's no lecture I could give you about constructivist listening or healing that's going to be better than you getting to practice it yourself. So are you ready for the unconventional keynote twist? But I believe that when given the opportunity to come together in community to do transformative healing work, we will become more authentic, we will organize, and we will reconnect in a true basis of solidarity, because none of us are having to play down authentically who we are in order to be in that space, in order to be our full selves and to bring all of us to bear in the leadership that we need for the world. I used to think that me doing healing and leading was really like self-indulgent, like who has time for this? Like there's really important things for us to be doing. But guess what? All those important things I was doing, my injury was running through all of it. I was replicating my hurt and my pain in everything I touched. Not unlike my dear and beautiful mother, my first leader in my life, brought her pain into how she led us, my sisters and our family, through no fault of her own. It is true that she did not pass on an accented English to me by teaching me Spanish. But you know what else happened? I never got to talk to my abuelitos in their first language. I never got to hear their stories and understand their world the way that they grew up in it. And my healing path has allowed me to grieve that very deep and profound loss. It's also allowed me to reclaim Spanish. It's allowed me to reclaim my Spanish with my Boricua, Chicana, Pocha accent, and know that that accent is authentically me, authentically Latina. Because you know what else is a US authentic Latina experience? It's having a mom who was the daughter of Mexican immigrants who believed she could make the lives of her daughters a little bit easier by having them not speak Spanish. I am not alone. My story is not unique, and it's different than yours, and yours is just as authentic as mine. Thank you.